quick pause before we get started, because this one's for you. You can now send us fan mail. If you're enjoying the episode, just click Love the Episode, send us a text in the show notes below. Each week, we will be shouting out listeners and sharing your message on the show. We don't collect any personal data, so make sure to include your name and the episode number you love so we can give you the credit you deserve. I am also exploring creating a community space where we can stay connected, support each other, and keep the conversations going. If there is a platform you love or wish there's one that existed, send me a note and let me know. This week's listener shoutout goes out to Marty, who wrote in to share that his wife has metastatic triple-negative breast cancer that went to her brain. She is a year out of brain surgery and is doing well. He just listened to episode 202 on the TNBC vaccine and was wondering about vaccine trials. Hey Marty, I was at the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium 2025 last week and heard updates from the TNBC vaccine trial. All major primary endpoints were met. The vaccine was safe and well tolerated at a maximum tolerated dose and generated a defined immune response in roughly 74% of participants. This immune response data further supports moving forward with clinical trial evaluation and planning for a phase 2 study. Doing a quick search, I did find a clinical trial number NCT 036-06967, which is exploring an individualized vaccine with chemotherapy for metastatic TNBC. Definitely look into these details and eligibility to see if that would be a fit for your wife. This is exactly why this community matters, because none of us are meant to navigate cancer or survivorship alone. Thank you, Marty, for being part of this space. Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfang, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. I'm so glad you are here because I am joined with two amazing women, Jesika and Elizabeth. Jesika is a wife, a mother of 5 children, and has been a meditation coach for the past 6 years. Her passion is to guide others in bringing mindfulness into the middle of real life, into parenting, work, relationships, and everyday challenges. Jesika believes that tools of meditation and mindfulness are the small and simple things that bring huge, beautiful changes to life. Outside of her meditation work, you will find her hiking in the mountains with her golden retriever, looking forward to date nights, smelling fresh flowers, and stopping for deep breaths in the sunshine. Elizabeth is a pianist, composer, and educator whose work celebrates music as a source of connection, healing, and storytelling, a reflection of our shared humanity. She has performed in more than 30 countries, from Carnegie Hall and the Kennedy Center to festivals across Europe and Asia, earning acclaim for her expressive playing and ability to connect deeply with audiences. After being diagnosed with breast cancer, Elizabeth turned to meditation and mindfulness as part of her healing process. This experience led to Inner Harmony, a piano and meditation album created in collaboration with Jesika, offering reflection, understanding, and hope to others navigating illness or change. Welcome to the conversation. All right, everybody, I am so excited for this podcast. And for those of you who listen all the time, I am always excited about every single episode I host. And so we just bring on such talented, amazing, inspirational speakers that I really hope are, one, giving us education and information and inspiration, but then also kind of lets us know, whether you're just tuning in or listening, that you're not alone in anything that you are experiencing, that your feelings are validated, that we have been with you, walking by your side. Elizabeth, I know you and I are going to get talking a little bit, but even if we were diagnosed with the same type or the same stage of cancer, we might react to it completely differently, have different outcomes, have completely different experiences. And so today I'm just really excited because I am going to dive into getting to know two amazing people that I'm already going to call dear friends, Elizabeth and Jesika. Jesika, if you want to introduce yourself, your name, where you're calling from, and a little bit about your background.
Sure. My name's Jesika Harmon. I'm coming from Alpine, Utah. We've kind of lived all over the country in my growing up years and married life, and I'm so, so grateful to be here in the beautiful mountains. Nature is a big part of my wellness practice, I might say. And so hiking and sunshine and fresh air, all the seasons has just been beautiful. So I have 5 children. My oldest is in college. My youngest is 8. So in the throes of motherhood, and could not be more grateful to get to be with my favorite people every day, and have been a meditation coach for the last 6 years and have loved working one-on-one with clients, teaching classes online and in person, and really helping people discover the power of stillness in healing, in progression and growth, in self-development, in connecting with the divine, connecting with yourself, and count my blessings every day that it is something I get to utilize and get to teach people. So excited for our conversation, Laura.
I am too. And as you were just giving your intro, full disclosure to our listeners as well, Elizabeth, me, and Jessica started emailing. And before the emails started snowballing, I was like, we just need to get you guys on the podcast because we have so much to talk about. And then just hearing your quick introduction, Jessica, one of the things that we host also at survivingbreastcancer.org is this idea of forest bathing, which I have never actually heard of before until we brought on an instructor who was like, how do we do forest bathing virtually? So, okay, we're going to put a pin in that for right now and jump into that
Amazing.
later down in the conversation. But the outdoors, meditation, all of this stuff, 100%. And Elizabeth, I know for our listeners who are on the podcast, they can't see this, but you are in front of a beautiful piano. I have to ask, please share your background and a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Laura. And we are so grateful to our mutual friend, Ellie, for introducing us. And I got to know you through your website and through the app and the amazing work that you do. And now it's an honor to be part of this podcast. I'm a musician. I'm a pianist, a composer, a teacher. This is pretty much where I live. And I live in New Hampshire in the Upper Valley. I've been here for 10 and a half years. Prior to that, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I love living here. Wonderful sense of community, and likewise, nature is so crucial for my sense of well-being and healing. This community is the perfect balance of nature and community. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. It's been almost a year since the beginning of my journey.
Wow. And so that feels very raw. You know, a lot of times we have people who are coming onto the podcast or sharing their experience, I would say 3 years out, 5 years out, unless they're living with metastatic disease. But I would say, like, have the courage to be within treatment, right? Like, as if this were yesterday. So I just want to thank you for taking the time and your vulnerability for sharing your story with our listeners as well.
Thank you. I actually just completed radiation just a couple of weeks ago, and I was at the hospital today. There's still so many appointments. It's still a part-time job. I mean, it's going to go on for a little while yet.
Yeah. How are you managing with radiation? To me, that was one of the things where I remember being so excited that I finished my rounds of radiation, but then I wasn't expecting to have the accumulation effect of like fatigue and exhaustion and burning kind of culminate at the end too.
I feel like I had set the bar really low in terms of what to expect. I wouldn't say that I go into it as a pessimist. I want to believe that I'm going to make it through well and as best as possible, but I received a fair amount of warning from physicians and from other patients. And so I'm happy to say that it turned out a little bit better than I was expecting. There is discoloration, some sensitivity, but that is healing. The fatigue was a cumulative effect, as was expected, but it's improving. And some of the more harsh side effects haven't presented. But I saw a lymphedema specialist today, and she said, this is the gift that keeps on giving. This is something you're going to have to stay on for a long time, pretty much the rest of your life. Just awareness of posture and that these muscles and tissue are going to be prone to tightness, and so these exercises and range of motion and care is something that this is your future to stay on top of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And lymphedema is one of those topics too that comes up a lot in our support groups where, jokingly, non-jokingly, I always say you're either managing so you don't get it or you're managing it because you've developed it. It's just one of those things that you have to just keep working and being aware of. So, yes.
The awareness is tricky, right? And you don't want to wish something upon yourself. And there was so much that I didn't know when I received this diagnosis. I would say that unless you have walked this walk yourself or have a very close family member or friend who has gone through this journey, you don't know. And as you mentioned, it's also very different. So even those that have gone on it, we can all relate to certain things, and yet there are individual aspects of it that are unique to us. But I just remember seeing that handbook that they sent a couple weeks after diagnosis, 300 pages, and going, oh, I had no idea. I had no idea that it can be like this. You get the diagnosis and you think about what you think are the worst case scenarios, but not realizing that even best case scenarios have so much nuance to them. And for me as a pianist, lymphedema and neuropathy and all these other potential side effects that were within, a few days of the diagnosis, going, I had no
Wow.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I ask how you found out that you had breast cancer? Was this through like a routine screening or out of the blue? Obviously, like no one plans for this.
It was a routine screening. I had actually cellulitis years ago that resulted in some mammograms and checkups due to some calcifications and breast tissue. So I'd been checked from, I would say, ages 36 to 39 on an annual basis. And then I turned 40 and I was like, okay, I'm doing well. There's no history in my family, no lumps. I think, I'm good. And it fell off of my radar. And it was 41 and had a checkup, and they said, you're due for your mammogram. And I said, okay, fine, I'll schedule it. And I went in, and a couple of weeks later, they said, we needed to come back in again. And then they said, we needed to come in for an ultrasound and biopsy. And I was like, is this really necessary? Maybe we can just watch this for a little bit. And they said, no, we really think that you should come in. I thought, okay, fine. Not a big deal. I live a few minutes from the location this would happen. The radiologist came in, introduced himself, and said, I've actually been to some of your concerts,
Oh my
which
gosh.
was very kind and reassuring to have that connection. Again, one of the benefits of being in a smaller community. And after the biopsy, shared with me, he said, you'll hear from the hospital in a couple of days or so with pathology results. However, I want to let you know that you have breast cancer. And I was shocked. I was floored for many reasons. One of them just was that possible without pathology. How can they know
Right.
without, and there are locations and shapes and other things he knew. And he wanted to share it personally so that it wasn't just a phone call or me seeing my chart, which, often I actually see those notifications come in before I have a chance to speak with the provider.
Of course.
So I was, in retrospect, grateful, but also very surprised, shocked, and it took a while for it to even sink in because of that.
Yeah, and especially to have these callbacks and to be told to come in for the biopsy too, where they probably had a good feeling or an inkling because this is their profession. They see so many patients go through. But you're absolutely right too. I think I had a very similar experience where, they rushed me from a mammogram that I had to advocate to get. I almost wish I was getting mammograms so early in my 30s, but I had no need to. It was never on my radar, no family history. I was a strict vegan at the time and, healthy, eating right. At least I thought. I thought I was doing everything right. And finally I noticed some dimpling, which again, everyone talks about understanding like, a pea-sized marble or something hard or like feel something, but it also presents in other ways. And so for me, it was actually like almost looking like, I guess deform is probably too harsh of a word because I didn't look deformed, but there was like some changes to my chest. And so it caused me to just ask. But the moment you start typing in like, breast changes and dimpling and, texture, like everything on the internet explodes and says like breast cancer. And so, I was like, well, that's one extreme, right? Like Dr. Google doesn't know everything. But, at the same time, it started to hit me and I don't know what your experience was with the biopsy. I've never had a biopsy in my life before. I didn't know what this was. And I remember the radiologist talking to me of like, here, you have to sign all these forms and there's a possibility that your lung could collapse and this could happen. And I'm like, wait, what? Like all of these things. Like, yes, I was thinking cancer, but at the same time, there are all of these other like issues that made me so panicky. So yes.
Exactly that. It's and that ended up being the case so often down the line of treatment in which I would get a combination of, do you have any questions? I'm like, I don't even know where to start. Please tell me everything that I need to know is what I wanted. And which then prompts the Googling and the searching, which provides partial truths, but also a lot of misinformation or over-information or Facebook and Instagram ads that are not necessarily helpful either.
Right, now that they're targeting you based on what you've looked up. Hey, my friend, sorry to interrupt the flow of this amazing podcast, but I'm reaching out to you to ask for your support to help us raise these critical funds that we need to continue to provide the emotional wellness classes, support programs, evidence-based education, and this podcast, of course, to support those impacted by breast cancer. Because of amazing donors like yourself, last year we've been able to offer over 400 programs serving 6,000 individuals, 57 webinars focused on medical education and information that attracted over 42,000 views, 133 workshops supporting mental health such as expressive writing, art expression, and meditation, and 142 support groups tailored to those living with early-stage breast cancer, metastatic disease, and inflammatory breast cancer. Help us keep our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, thriving. Hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org/donate to make a one-time contribution or a recurring monthly gift. It's the perfect way to celebrate this holiday season. Give the gift of hope.
As well as you may expect this and this and this and this and this. However, we have no idea what you can expect. Therefore, don't plan anything. For the first time in my adult life, I had to put a hard stop to plans, to performances, to summer festivals that I participate in and direct in. And like, how about in June? We don't know. How about in August? We don't know. So there was a combination of that we don't know, and be prepared for anything, which is huge. It's really hard.
Yes, it's very hard to, for me, breast cancer came at a time in academia at the time in the middle of the semester. I was preparing to take a cohort of students down to Chile during a fall break that we had planned. And I remember calling the faculty member saying, I am so sorry, you need to find a replacement for me. I can't go. I just found out I got diagnosed with cancer. I'm starting chemo next week. Like it was like, it forced me, for better or for worse, to, as you said, cancel everything on my calendar, plans just out the door, pause and really focus on myself and self-care. And I don't think I was really, not that I'm saying we needed cancer to do this, but Jessica, I'll turn things over to you also in meditation and understanding your well-being. Cancer stopped me in my tracks to force me to stop being so stressed out and a workaholic and all of these other things, to be like, okay, now you have a year and a half to just focus on yourself, for better or for worse, and all of these appointments. And so that to me was just really shocking when I had to literally go through the Rolodex of canceling everything and everything. So I'm curious, how has that manifested in your work? So as a pianist, what was going through your head at the time of, okay, I just got diagnosed, I have to cancel performances, but what role did playing music have or not have while you were going through treatment?
So I'll start off with relating to your experience. I have led a very full life, and as a musician, that is kind of normal, right? We're trying to maximize the hours in the day with teaching and practicing and performing and composing. There are just never enough hours. And so amongst the first thoughts was, I don't have time for this. And that was a really big deal for me. I was just incredibly upset and resentful of this is not going to work with my schedule. I don't have time for another job. I did not sign up for this class. All right. We have these stress streams in which we're, not attending classes, and suddenly you realize how much homework is due and that there's a test coming up. And I'm like, this is a real life version of exactly that. And the diagnosis came in on December 17th. So it was right before the holidays and right before weekend of concerts. The next day I drove down to Maryland and had two concerts. One on Friday, two on Saturday, two on Sunday. And so there was really no time to process, just went right into it. Then time with family, but not sharing with anyone beyond that because the timing wasn't right. So I had a couple weeks to deal with myself, which was probably one of the harder people in my life to deal with, because it's easier for me to be patient with anyone else, with all the kids, with my adult students, with my neighbors, with loved ones, but didn't have time to deal with my emotions. One of the interesting things about these initial weeks, so because of the timing, there was just a little bit of slowdown in terms of getting additional testing and genetic testing and oncotype and all of that. So chemo didn't start. It was neoadjuvant therapy. It sounds like you had the same experience. Until the beginning of February. So I had these basically 6 weeks, many appointments in January, but these 6 weeks nothing was physically changing in my body, but I had a lot of time to think about it. And some of that was, I wake up in the morning and then realize, I have cancer. and just wish that, am I imagining this or is this real? The rest of the world seems to be going on just fine. Who can I tell or not tell? Physically be unchanged, to be, I was attending these yoga and strength classes in 100-degree heat, lifting 25-pound dumbbells in each arm. I was like, I'm strong. And if no one had told me any better, I would say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. How can this be?
Yes.
So that was a lot of that initial just like shaking of reality. Music, and I would say especially teaching, has been a lifeline. Teaching, because it is giving, and that's the thing that it's a gift to give. Especially working with students and teaching something that I love one-on-one. Kids bring in a lot of curiosity and questions and optimism, and so that was essential to my mental health. It's actually something that came up in a few of the appointments. They would say, okay, tell us about your social circles. And do you have kids? And I said, well, I have a lot of kids in my life. And they seemed very happy to hear that. And as a musician, I think the only other time in my adult life that I hadn't been performing, actually my whole life, was during COVID, right? That was the only other hard stop to performing. And I just remember coming back into it with such gratitude. But this was also a kind of like, okay, you're not going to be able to, we can't predict, and we don't know if you can travel, and we don't know what's going to happen with neuropathy or something else. So right now, just everything is on pause. But teaching next to the student here on this bench, and we're playing, and it's not biggest masterpieces of my life, but you can play something simple beautifully, and when a student responds to it, understands it, and then wants that as well, it's powerful. I would walk out of lessons every day during chemo and go, okay, for these few hours, I wasn't thinking about this. I wasn't thinking about diagnosis. I wasn't on my phone or computer looking things up. I was doing something that I love. And so I guess my take home point is it might not be music or teaching music or playing music for everyone. For those of us who do, wonderful. But having that healthy distraction and interaction and purpose was essential for me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad you were able to find those pockets of joy to be present in those moments, and through the chaos of a cancer diagnosis, find these moments of tranquility and solace through the music. I love that.
Mm.
It was so surprising to me to find out that, medicine is not a perfect science. I was pretty healthy. I mean, never really broken a bone or anything like outside of this cancer diagnosis. And then for doctors to say, well, we're not sure, we're going to wait and see. We got to find out. We got to do another thing. You don't know. And so, Jesika, as someone who kind of practices meditation, and I want to take us on like these other spectrum outside of like the white lab coats, when you think of like health and wellness and how you have put together, your life and your practice and your well-being, can you talk to me about some of those like rituals and daily life skills that you are so lucky to be able to have in your world?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And what I love about your comment is that it's only when you go through a wellness journey that you start to see there's several different parts of it. That I have a brother who's a doctor, a brother-in-law who's a doctor. I have lots of experience in our families of needing modern medicine and knowing and recognizing the miracle that it is, that there's so much that we do know and can get help with. But also on the other spectrum, having a husband who's done a lot of work in addiction recovery and anxiety and depression and health and nutrition, I've also seen that there are so many things that really contribute to our health that we could be doing, going to our doctor and having our checkups. But if we're not getting good sleep and we're not getting the minerals and nutrients that we need, if we're not spending time in nature, if we're not spending time in stillness, there's so many things. So I think with my work in meditation, what I have loved is seeing how much the outside world affects our physical body and how much our thoughts and our internal emotions affect our bodies. That we can literally have an entire day where our bodies are in fight or flight because of what we're consuming, because of what we're working on, because of who we're talking with. There could be relational drama going on, anything that's going on, that our bodies, because of how we are created, put us right in our fight or flight because we're trying to survive. Our body's trying to protect us. Our brain's trying to protect us. So if we don't have any practices that help tell our body, you can rest right now.
Mm.
You can relax. You'll get to those things when the time is right, but to let your brain, your body, your heart slow down a little bit, that's the only time your physical body can rejuvenate, can repair, can rest, those things that we need to function properly. So I loved learning or thinking about the word disease. Our body is at dis-ease. There's things that happen because we aren't giving it time to rest and repair.
Yes. No, I totally agree. And I love how you mentioned, if we are in this like fight or flight for a day, I feel like this has been like a year where, unfortunately your body can get stuck in these like high cortisol levels of not knowing how to rest and recover. You're constantly stressed or thinking. I know we all have, racing minds trying to go to bed before you can settle down and fall asleep. And then that can lead to inflammation, that can lead to weight gain, then that leads to other health issues. And it's just this like perpetual cycle of, gosh, I can't get out of this rut. I can't figure out how to break it. And it really comes back to diet, nutrition, lifestyle, wellness, exercise. In fact, my husband just the other day was like, you need more oxygen. I'm like, what? He was like, go take the dog for a walk. Like, you just need to like breathe more. And I was like, okay, like, thanks for noticing that. But he like, it's so true. So,
and it's crazy too how our culture doesn't really support wellness in this way. We have something in our pockets at all times that can take our time and attention, that when we think I'm just relaxing, I'm just going to scroll. We think that that's good for us, but we're reading things that trigger a response that keeps us in our fight or flight. So often, if we're looking at the news, if we're looking at things that have happened to others, if we're in comparison because we're looking at what someone else is doing or having, like, we need time away from our phones and with ourselves. And that is where, for me, I have found meditation and mindfulness practices to be such a powerful help.
So powerful. And so now I need like the revealing question. So we heard, Elizabeth, your story about being diagnosed, Jesika, your practice with meditation and coaching and wellness. How did the two of you connect? Because we're going from Utah to New Hampshire, breast cancer and meditation. Help me connect the dots here. Who would like to go first?
Go for it, Elizabeth.
Sure. We met about 24 years ago through a national program for high school girls called.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We met through this program 24 years ago. Jesika was a year older than me, and she was a national representative of the program. And I was basically applying for her job, if you will. And I just remember looking up to her and her accomplishments and how well spoken she is and her. But I was one of many. And I don't think we even had any conversation during the couple weeks we were at this program. But social media was relatively new at the time. This was back in 2001. And at some point, we must have connected on Facebook, and I would see the updates on her life, on her family, and eventually on the meditation as well. And then she would see my updates on performing and teaching and music. So there was an indirect following of each other's lives. So in early 2025, in January, when I had already reached out to many of my closest friends, it was time to share it with other people in my network. I wanted to make sure that I share. I didn't want this to be a secret. I wanted people to know what's going on and how it's going, and maybe be along my side for this journey, learn from it, whatever it ends up being. I knew that it would be physically very obvious that I'm going through something, so I might as well put it out there. And so I posted it on Facebook. And shortly thereafter, Jesika saw and reached out to me.
I might add, I had been in a place where a year previously, I had watched my father-in-law go through pancreatic cancer. And when he first got diagnosed, my husband and I, being in the world of healthcare, knowing the medical side and the other side, my husband did a lot of research on what could help on a cancer journey. If you do go the chemo route, what are some things that could help? And found all of this amazing research on fasting and certain vitamins and nutrients and different practices. And on all the things he was finding, meditation was on all of those lists. So I started doing a deep dive on, what resources could I find for my father-in-law to help that would, whether they were guided meditations, some things that I've seen that you actually offer for people going through breast cancer, but I couldn't find just in general, meditations for cancer, mindfulness, help give that to my father-in-law who had no experience with meditation. So for me, approach him wasn't quite right. Your daughter-in-law, that it just didn't feel quite right, but I couldn't find anything in that way that could be supportive. And he wasn't necessarily open to some of these alternative practices outside of the medical world. So when I saw Elizabeth's post, because I had had it in my heart to help somehow, some way, people who are going through cancer, I thought maybe this would be an opportunity for me to help her in a way by teaching her how to use meditation and mindfulness, and an opportunity for me to learn what could be helpful. So I was so excited when I reached out and said, I'd love to do this pro bono if you'd be interested in working with me and learning about meditation and how to use it. And so when she accepted, it was just this beautiful start of a journey where while she was going through chemotherapy and different treatments and experiences, losing her hair, the emotions, all of that, we would meet weekly in these meditation coaching sessions where I would ask questions and listen and really try to guide her to her deeper knowing. That's the focus of meditation coaching. Is I believe the answers are in you. You know what you need, but you maybe just have to uncover some layers to get there, and then to offer practices and guided meditations and different things for Elizabeth to experience and use as she was going through her treatment to see if they would be helpful.
Incredible. So you were a meditation coach always, like previously, but never really practicing with the cancer population.
Yes.
So, and Elizabeth, what were your thoughts when she gave you this incredible offer to help support you?
It was immediately received as the gift that it was intended to be. And it certainly helped that I looked up to and admired Jesika. I'm not sure if I had seen an ad for meditation, if I would have pursued it. But that personal connection certainly was right for me and what I needed. I had a couple of books that were given to me years ago. I remembered a conversation from some maybe 15 years ago with a dad of one of my students. And he said, this is something really extraordinary. And we talked about, and then he explained, I love the story that he shared about taking a glass and collecting some water from a stream during a rainstorm. And that water churning about with sediment was cloudy and unclear when we collected it from the stream because everything was washing into it. But then you sit down on the tabletop and you let it be for just a little bit, and the sediment settles at the bottom, doesn't get removed magically, but it allows for that clarity to see through and sort things out, if you will, right? So I will always remember that conversation with him. But then I didn't do too much with it. I was like, I don't have time for sitting still for 10 minutes. And I'm doing my yoga classes, and I'm going out in nature and taking walks and gardening and cooking and playing music. And those are all wonderful things then. And I think I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But something that came up through our work is that a lot of what surfaced during cancer treatments was already present in my life. This was just the perfect storm for it to really bubble up to the surface. And this is everything from perceptions on aging and my body to busyness, to trying to control my life and plan and organize everything. And so our weekly conversations, which were a gift to also to talk to Jesika, who was gifted in listening, asking reflective questions, and then offering this meditation that would provide space and a filter and an immediate, I could feel this physical response. It would transform the reality and give me a light at that end of the tunnel. I was like, tunnel is closing in. And okay, there's a new possibility that I have not considered. And then I would have an assignment from Jesika. She would follow up with an email, a summary, some readings, some quotes, and something to practice that week. And then, I'm used to practicing for hours a day. It takes practice to get good at this. There is no SD card that you can put into my head or any student's head, and boom, their fingers can play. We haven't figured that one out. It takes daily, consistent work for something to become part of our subconscious and conscious existence. And so Jesika brought that up early on. This is something you're going to have to practice in the good times too, so that in the challenging moments, you think of it, you put it into place. This is how it works.
And Jesika, how did you prepare for these weekly sessions and meetings with Elizabeth, knowing or maybe not knowing what she went through that week or how she was going to be feeling? How did you prepare for kind of this new endeavor into the cancer space?
It's a really great question. I don't think anyone has ever asked me that, actually. Aside from my training 5-6 years ago, actually close to 7 years ago, with the Suraflow Liberate program, which was life-changing for me because it took me through the different types of meditation, how to guide meditation, how all the spectrum of questions to ask and the listening and all of the skills in that way. But it also took me through a personal meditation practice that had to increase by 10 minutes every week. This was over the course of 6 months. And I had all my children home and young children, and the best time, really the only quiet time to do it was early in the morning. So my mornings got earlier and earlier and earlier, and I put more and more time on that, whatever I was sitting on to do meditation, that gave me a lot of experience with the power of stillness and really my own thoughts and my own feelings and working through things. I went through a book which a lot of artists use called The Artist's Way, that is a beautiful book for creators that we used in our training, that had me write 3 pages every morning of just free write that helped me. I've always been a journaler. I've used planners. Like, writing is important to me, but it helped me see the power of processing my thoughts as I get them out on paper. So there was a huge process in my training that really changed me personally. But then working with clients and teaching classes and really honing in on what I think are maybe the most important mindfulness tools, doing the research, having the science at my fingertips over the course of these several years, then meeting with Elizabeth and other clients allows me to really take what they're going through and work really hard to use intuition, which I believe comes from above, to know what they need most in that moment, to say, maybe it's breath work, maybe it's a mantra or affirmation, maybe it's a visualization. Let's do some meditation right now and see if we can kind of uncover what you're feeling, but you're not quite sure what's at the bottom of it. Maybe it's using gratitude. Maybe there's all these different tools of mindfulness that I've now had so much experience with because I practice them in my own personal life and have seen clients and people in my classes use, that in that moment of sitting across from the screen or across the room from someone, to my preparation that day of, however many minutes I sit in meditation before our session starts, to really just connect with that and that inspiration and that intuition, to in the moment know exactly what they need. Because as I said, the answers aren't in me, the answers are in you and your connection with whatever you want to call it, the universe, God, the divine above, whatever you want to call it. There is something bigger than us that can guide us to what we need. And so having a little bit of help from a meditation coach can sometimes just be that little piece that teaches you then how to do it for yourself.
I love that. And we heard, Elizabeth, as you were just describing your experience, that your answers were becoming clearer, that they were there with you. And so Jesika was really able to kind of elicit some of those discussions through the practice and the weekly assignments and everything. So powerful. I have never done one-on-one meditation, but when I have been in a group setting, I've always appreciated it when the meditation teacher would let us, like, you mentioned a whole bunch of tools, Jesika. So like, the breath work, the visualization, doing like the body scan of just like recognizing different parts of your body, and then giving us permission, if that doesn't suit us, to let it go. So what may be so beautiful for some people in this particular group, we would share afterwards, like, how did that make you feel? And what came to mind. And some people, had different colors, different smells, different textures, different things. And it was just so interesting of just giving that permission of like, okay, if we're talking about a visualization, which for me isn't always like the best tool, because I know some tools that work better for myself. It's like, okay, I can follow this path and I can be there and I can listen, but I know it's not going to take me as deep as like maybe just, the counting and the breath work type of places. The other thing that I love that my yoga teacher always does when we're lying there, and I know, Elizabeth, you're mentioning yoga, don't think about like planning dinner or your grocery list, or like when you're lying there on the mat, right? And you're just like, okay, this is Shavasana and I'm supposed to stay still, but I'm like, I have to be the first one out because, the locker room's going to be full and I need to like grab my coat and then get into the car to go to the grocery shop. Like it starts getting busy. And then she says like, and relax your tongue. And I don't realize like how stressed my tongue gets, or like random parts of my body. Like, can you focus on like the tips of your ears? And I'm like, I've never thought about that before, but like just to bring awareness to these different parts of our body that, we don't really think about. And so I think that has been such a beautiful awareness technique going through, any challenge in our life. If you're sitting in traffic, it's like, gosh, why am I clenching my teeth? And like my jaw starts to hurt, or like all these triggers that happen, going exactly back to what you were saying, Jesika, like all these external forces that are really impeding our day and creating that like fight and flight syndrome.
Yes. And what I love what you're saying too is it was really powerful and instructive for me to sit with Elizabeth and listen to some of the things that she was going through and some of the things that were coming up in a cancer treatment. Because if you don't have something helpful for your thoughts to focus on, when you're sitting there getting this horrible red devil, is that what it was called?
Oh,
chemo
yes.
treatment, that literally the thought of it, Elizabeth would describe, like would make her physically sick. So sitting in that moment, not having anything to help you, you're just grin and bear it, can make it even harder than when you have something beautiful to visualize how this is actually helping your body when it goes in, or a phrase, a mantra, a thought to focus your mind on can make some of those experiences in treatment and in recovery so much different because of what you're choosing to do with your mind that affects your body.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do not miss seeing those packages with like the crazy warning labels that like dangerous, toxic. They're coming in, they're putting on all these gloves before they inject this into your body. And you're like, God forbid it falls and touches me, but like we're injecting this into your vein. Oh gosh. Yes. Those visuals are going to be so helpful to have, Jesika, to know like, okay, this is, how can we reframe this so that this is actually killing the toxicity that could ultimately kill me, right? Like, how is this going to kill the cancer? And so, yeah, I totally agree. When my hair falls out, it means the drugs are doing the work. When I'm feeling this way, it means the drugs are doing the work. And so, just trying to reframe. So how did you guys ended up meeting in person after years, I guess, of not seeing each other, right? So you like reconnected, and what brought you to meet in person? Or I
So
guess, how did the
just
music come about, right? Like somehow
Yeah.
there's like music and meditation,
yeah,
like
we were recently trying to figure out how did we come upon the idea of collaboration, and honestly, we're not sure. That was some sort of a divine inspiration. Can't trace back that conversation or find it in our email or text, but something happened
divine, something from
that
above.
we said, okay, we're I'm flying out to Utah, see you in a week and a half, and this was amidst ACT chemo. I was through the Taxol phase and I was about to start AC. And my oncologist said, now's the time. You'll have, about a week, your blood counts will go up. And we want to do it before we start this new one, because that's just going to be so much more challenging for you. So if you're going to go now. And it worked with Jessica's schedule, booked it and made it happen. And we started talking about, okay, what do we want to do? Some sort of, I'm doing the music. She's doing the meditation. What is the message going to be? Let's look back at these emails that she sent me after each session. And the emails had a title and the subject line that was essentially the essence, the summary of that week. I am more than my body. I can't do this alone, but I'm not alone. The only way forward is through. There is more to this than I can see. Right. And brainstorming by conversation, by Google Doc, putting in ideas and just whittling down to what we thought would be the most essential for meditation topics. And I came with some music, some ideas. And I think it was day one, we sat down in her living room and I said, I'm just going to play some music for you and let me know what you think about each of these. And she said, that one would be good, but could you try maybe instead of in a minor key, it could be in a major key. Oh, I like that one. That would go well with this, right? But these were, snippets of an idea or pieces that would have to be fully customized according to her live work. There was no script that Jesika was preparing. Oh, I'm going to read exactly this, and therefore I can, put the music in between the words. This was a trust fall in a lot of
Wow.
ways. Like, okay, we think we can make this work. And it was one day in the studio to record everything, audio and video, with basically no chance of editing it because each take was just so different than the previous. The one thing that we did too that I think was really helpful is that Jesika reached out to members of her community who had been through some sort of an illness or cancer experience. And we visited them or invited them to her home and presented these meditations for them live, just as a let's go through this as a dress rehearsal, and it's going to be different every time, but this way we know that we can respond to each other in real time.
Wow.
And those provided so much reassurance that we're on the right track.
Yes.
And really what was so beautiful about the experience was as this conversation started back when we were doing the meditation coaching, that wouldn't it be neat if we could take what we've experienced to help others going through breast cancer or other physical challenges. And so as she described, the Google Docs and the conversations and narrowing down to, what topics would be most helpful, to then when we were together and her at the piano and me, doing the guided meditation, when she first suggested the idea of why don't we do these for some people live before we record them, made me a little bit nervous actually, because as a meditation guide, all of it is in the moment with the individual. It's that inspiration, it's that divine guidance. And so to think we have to, narrow these down enough to be something that could be shared with someone and be recorded. For her, from a musical standpoint, this is just rehearsal. This is just practice. And for me, it was like, I really got to trust that what we're landing on is going to be what it is that could help someone. So it was a beautiful opportunity, I think, for me to learn and for us to co-create together something that we really feel is meant for others going through breast cancer, going through another type of cancer, going through these things that physically take over your mind and your heart and your schedule, and helping reframe them in a way, because as we looked at these different topics, they really can be applied to almost anyone going through something hard and help them in ways that could be so beneficial.
Absolutely. So Elizabeth, with your music composing, was that different every time too? Or did you have certain keys or scales, or was it more improv during the recordings?
There was a loose sketch as to what material I might use for each meditation, but it is very much a live response to Jessica's words and images. So this is something that's, I think, very different than anything that I've experienced in pre-recorded guided meditations that I've found to date, in that the music is meant to really support the message. That as a performer, my goal is always to bring the audience into a new world, to travel through time, through imagination, through history, through sound, and to they'll forget the rest of their life for a little bit because of this musical experience that just brings them in, even though it doesn't have words. As a composer, it's to convey a picture or a story through music, through the structure, through some sort of imagery, water or floating. You can produce certain things that start to support an idea. And so with this, it's finding a tempo that allows us to sink in and listen and slow down, and it's not computer perfect the way that a metronome would be, right? So I'm breathing, and therefore the music is breathing too along with me. Jessica takes a little bit more time. I take a little bit more time. Jessica talks about this raft flowing down the river, and the music starts to flow along with it. And then the raft starts to float up, and the music goes up an octave, a couple more octaves to inhale. And there might be, something that creates that feeling of stretch in the music, and to exhale, and something that creates release. And it's not present all the time, but there are these little cues that keep encouraging you to come back to it, because it's easy for our active minds to just want to run off to something else.
Yeah.
I love
I love this.
so much of a new experience for me and for several of the people who we did these for live, that it was almost like, this is different than other just guided meditation with music. So much so that I felt like I needed to coin a new term. Just like in yoga, there's all the different types of yoga. You don't really know what they are unless you're there in the room doing a vinyasa flow or doing, the different types of yoga, that I felt like this needed a new name, a certain type of meditation that really, really allows you to have an experience because the music takes you there and the words take you there. So actually had a really neat journey coming up with what a good name for this meditation would be. Had a group of people that looking into Latin and Greek and Hebrew roots, and how could we come up with a word that would really describe what this meditation does, and could not love more the word we landed on that combines the Latin word for sound, sonus, and this amazing Hebrew word I found, nisayon, that means experience through trial, and combined those to be Sonisah Meditation, in hopes that this is not just a standalone album, that there will be more Sonisah Meditation albums that can be meant for people who are going through something hard and want to not just survive and grin and bear it and endure, but want to grow and be transformed through the process.
Wow. Beautiful. If I could just stop the recording right here, this is where we would end to all of my listeners, right? Are you I'm so taken and enthralled in this story, in this experience. I love that you've coined a new term for this. I think a lot of times when we think about, I'll use in our oncology language, integrative oncology, right? Where we think about one type of practice. It's meditation, or it's acupuncture, it's massage, it's music, it's writing, it's dance. But it's not and, it's either or, at least to this date that I've experienced, right? And so really what you're bringing together is let's take two of these and bring them together. Let's, bring in movement, let's bring in sound, let's bring in words, to really bring, I would say a higher healing almost of modality that you're offering to people.
Right. Well, I just think that's what's so amazing about having a musician like Elizabeth, because music is such a part of who she is and what she's done with music, that it really allowed us both to co-create in a way that, like she said, you can make the music take the person somewhere, and really use the volume and the key and all the changes in that really allowed this to go where it went, I think. So it just speaks so much to Elizabeth and her training and her art. And it was just such an honor to work together.
If you think about it, both by nature and nurture, this is something that we're used to. Commercials play to that, and we use a particular music for fitness and exercise classes. And film composers are also helping to guide our emotions through the journey. What would a movie be like without the soundtrack, right? This is just making it a little bit more specific. It's kind of like a form of poetry, if you will. I had an interesting experience sharing this with my parents a few weeks ago, and I was curious what their thoughts would be, because as a classical pianist, most of the music that I play is very complex. And this is not necessarily very complicated music, because it can't be. It needs to support, not take the spotlight away from the message that Jesika is guiding and sharing. And my mom looked at me afterwards and she said, no, this is really something very special. Everyone suffers, and this is universal. The music that you compose is for people who play and they're seeking it. And so, what percentage of the population can find this or needs this? And this is something that we all need. And it just meant so much to hear that from her, to go, okay, this is worthwhile endeavor. And it's interesting for me as a musician. I've sometimes wondered, okay, what is my role? Yes, I teach. So, okay, I get to work with young people. That's very special, but I don't get to change politics or policies or finances or cure people or save the planet and environment. And this feels like something like, okay, I get to give in a way that feels very meaningful in this collaboration, especially.
Outstanding. So where can people find this music? Now, we're on the edge of our seats. We can't wait to experience this. We already have an avid listeners, and, people who are part of our survivingbreastcancer.org community are very attuned to the work that we do, right? We offer meditation classes, we offer Qigong classes, expressive writing, art therapy, etc. I'm going to have to look into more combinations and different ways of pairing this together. But if someone's listening right now, where can they find your...
Yeah, the album's called Inner Harmony. And if you just put in Jesika Harmon or Elizabeth Borowsky, it's on Spotify and Apple Music. And it's on YouTube on my page and on Elizabeth's page. And there's one there right now, and the video is being edited and produced right now. So those will ultimately all be on YouTube. So,
Amazing.
so easy. And what I love to suggest for people is when you listen to, for example, one of these tracks on Inner Harmony, if it resonates with you, make a stillness or meditation playlist where you can save the ones that resonate. You might listen to one and say, oh, that's nice, but doesn't necessarily take me anywhere. Or, maybe visualization doesn't resonate with me. Or, listen to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an experience with it, save it and go back to it over and over. Because the more you do, just like the subconscious things we have going on in our minds that are not helping us, that we've had going on for years, we can start to make those new neural pathways of these thoughts that can be helpful and healing. And so when we do them over and over, it just raises the energy in our bodies and our minds and really does contribute, I believe, to healing.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories, your collaboration, your gifts that you're bringing to this world for, I would say not just cancer patients, but anyone, as you were mentioning, who's going through time and can really, benefit from meditation and music. So thank you both for sharing your stories. Is there anything I haven't asked that you want to share with our listeners or that we haven't covered? I know we'll put links to your album and all of your Spotify and YouTube channels in the show notes so people can easily click and listen. But if there's any social media handles or for people to find you, feel free to let me know and we can include that too.
Laura, thank you so much for having us and for allowing us to share my journey and our work together and our hope for this project. One of the things that was initially really hard to hear was it's really different for everyone, right? And that felt like I couldn't plan and I couldn't anticipate what to expect, but I've tried to transform that into our body is amazing and miraculous, and it might be different than it was a year ago or 5 years ago, but there is hope and there's potential and there's a balance between what they know now, these other resources that we have, what they will know in another 5 years. And that positive outlook is so important.
Absolutely.
And I would just add to anyone who's listening, Elizabeth is such a beautiful testament to if you think you don't have time for meditation or these other practices that can be so helpful, if you think my brain just goes too fast, I have too much, there's no way I could focus, I would just encourage you to try it. Try it over and over, just even if it's while driving in the car. Turn on one of these guided meditations, even if it's while you're on a walk, even if it's just a 3-minute song that's it's beautiful and peaceful that you already love, just listen to that before bed or listen to that first thing in the morning. Use what we've been given that can sometimes work against us in our devices. We can use it to help us find the stillness that our mind and heart and body truly need.
Well said. Thank you both. And we will definitely continue the conversation soon. I can't wait to follow all of the songs and this great new process of meditation and music. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast is from personal experiences and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you are looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Our show is made possible by our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, and by our incredible donors like yourself. You can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org to sign up for our mailing list, make a donation, and explore the 400+ programs we offer each year at survivingbreastcancer.org/events. Until next time, keep on thriving.